Prelims live before lock for UFC Vegas number 25, which goes down tonight. Which, Pete, I will tell you, before I saw the UFC tweet on the start times, I thought it started at 5 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah,
Clearly, I was wrong. It's not starting until 7 o'clock. I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, main card, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Fights be over by about 11. All right, cool. And then I saw the graphic. I was like, well, nope. I'm staying up a little later than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I am. I never really know what time and anything's going on. So I always kind of check, and I'm like, all right, well, it's going to be an early night. And not really. I mean, 7 p.m. fights is going to be a pretty long night, especially because it's a free card. So, you know, they're going to be tons of ads and tons of commercials. But regardless, we're here to help you guys, take down some tournaments, win some cash. I'm excited for some of these fights, but, it's an okay card.
Yeah, there's definitely some fights on this card that I think you've got to have a good amount of exposure to, especially when we're talking about GPPs. Of course, we are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight, and be sure to head over to the Awesemo Twitter account right now. Check out that pinned tweet for the flash giveaway we have going on in terms of the Kentucky Derby, where one correct guesser will win a free month of Awesemo Plus. So be sure to check out that over there at our Twitter account at Awesemo_com. First off, we got to talk about the slate went through one change yesterday as Gabriel Benitez versus Jonathan Pierce off the fight card, where Gabriel Benitez misses weight by 4.5 pounds. And JSP says no to the fight. This is my pure speculation on it, no inside information. I think the JSP camp wanted way more than 30% to sit there and say, you're coming down a weight class. You came nowhere close to making weight. If we're going to take this fight, we're going to take a ton of money. But Pete, I want to get your fighter perspective on the statement that Gabriel Benitez put out. Quote, "First of all, I want to apologize for the inconvenience of my weight this morning. UFC and my opponent knew about the medical issues I was having since 1 week ago, and they were offered a catch weight in 150. They turned it down and decided to go all the way to 146, knowing there was a chance we wouldn't make it instead of being a real fighter and take it at 150. This morning, we accepted about 150 and a little extra cash for me being 0.5 pounds over 150. I mean, apparently he forgot to put number 4 in there. And then all of a sudden, after a face-off, they decided to quit. Yes, we did not make the 146 mark, but tried all costs to keep the fight alive, and they just did everything to not fight me. What goes around comes around if you fight long enough. Been fighting for 15 years and never had issues until this camp. See you down the road. I hope it's soon enough."
Yeah, I'm about to go in right now because that irritates me. That entire statement, right? Like, all right, I've had opponents miss weight before, and it is the most tilting thing in the world because you sign a contract at a contracted weight, right? Like, if you're a featherweight, you need to make featherweight. If you cannot make featherweight, bump up a weight class. Don't come to me a week before the fight trying to ask for a catch weight. Regardless, whether you had an injury or whatever, that's irresponsible on Benitez's behalf. And the fact that he's kind of pointing the finger at JSP makes absolutely no sense. And I think it's completely unprofessional. You need to bump up a weight class then, buddy, because, missing by 5 pounds, okay, you were banking on JSP being okay with it. And a lot of fighters, make decisions with their pride and will still accept the fight. But this is a tactical decision from the JSP camp because they understand that their path to victory is via grappling, right, against Benitez. And a guy that wants to nullify grappling will come in heavier in an attempt to try to have an advantage in the matchup. So, I mean, that whole statement, like my blood's boiling right now with that. But regardless, we don't have the fight. The fight's off the card. And it was a tricky fight to, kind of pick a side either way. So, on one way, like I'm okay with the fight being scrapped. I feel for JSP. I understand what Benitez is saying, but like, dude, you signed a contract at 145 pounds, man. Like, you need to really reconsider things. If like, whether it's your nutrition or what, bump up a weight class, because expecting another fighter to kind of just like be okay with a situation like that. Like, I've had a fighter when I fought for Bellator, he missed weight, and I think he missed by like 2.5 pounds. And I could have either, accepted some compensation by, accepting the fight and moving on, or I could say, I want him to try to make the weight for another hour. I purposely said I want him to try to make the weight because I want him to suffer as much as possible. And I also don't want him to think that he's having an advantage in the fight. So, all right, let me breathe. All right, next subject, Jason. Next subject, Jason.
Well, this is my thing about the whole situation, because there was someone tweeting at me about this, and they're very much in disagreement with me. We're not talking about 1 or 2 pounds here. We're talking about 4.5 pounds. And I can tell you this based on conversations I've had with people in this, I've been in this industry for over 10 years. And when a call is made more than a week or more about going to a catch weight, there's a lot of people in this industry at that moment believe you have no intentions of making weight.
Correct.
And that is a fact of this. This is all on Gabriel Benitez. Look, is the UFC likely unhappy that JSP did not take this fight? No question. They don't want to lose a fight. But at the end of the day, this is pointing the finger straight up at Gabriel Benitez of, dude, you signed a contract to make 146 pounds. End of the day, this is on you. But
yeah,
it was a fight that we were all looking at here. Of course, if you do have any questions, be sure to line those up, whether it's in our premium Slack channel or also right here on YouTube. Of course, that's why we're here. We're here to answer questions. Of course, be sure to subscribe to Awesemo right here on YouTube. If you have not done that, it's very simple. Just hit that button, hit that notification bell so you know when a show is live on channel. And of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up. That really does appreciate it. Of course, and also be sure to check out the free premium tools and data we have over at Awesemo.com today, which is the NBA Big Board and MLB main slate ownership projection. So let's get we're here for the questions. So let's get right into the questions. Let's see here. Before I get into a question, let's talk Marab Davishvili versus Cody Stamen. This has been a topic of conversation over the last 24 hours over in our premium Slack account. And I talked about this on Thursday's strategy show, that I believe Cody Stamen is a play you need to look at over on the FanDuel side of the equation. The reason for that being is takedown defenses. I want to put some stats in here. So this is Marab's takedowns in the UFC. Against Frankie Saenz, 11 of 23. Ricky Simon, 6 of 22. Terrion Ware, 5 of 8. Brad Katona, 5 of 9. Casey Kenny, 12 for 24. Against Gustavo Lopez, 13 for 18. Against John Dodson, 2 for 20. In the John Dodson equation, he scored 54 points just because of takedown defenses. On FanDuel, that's why. I will tell you, on DraftKings, I am way under the field on Marab Davishvili. I max exposure at 20% to Marab. I'm at 20% with Cody Stamen. I'm at the field when it comes to Cody Stamen. I do not. This is a fight. You talked about this Thursday on the strategy show. If this fight plays out on the feet, the better striker is Cody Stamen.
Yeah, I'm interested in the matchup. This is actually one of my favorite fights on the card just because of the stylistic matchup and what Marab has been in the UFC. Because if he's able to go in there and ragdoll Cody Stamen, then I'm completely sold on Marab being a future challenger within the division. And I do recognize that Marab is very, very talented, but I think that people could be somewhat overlooking Cody Stamen's wrestling pedigree. And for the most part, it's offensive. And in a lot of his fights, he has the wrestling advantage. Now he's going up against a guy where he's going to have to focus his wrestling defense and kind of counter striking and picking him apart on the feet. And I think that I think he's probably going to get taken down a couple of times, right? He'll defend some, probably a lot, get taken down a few times, and then punish Marab on the feet. So on the feet, it all comes down to how long you think this fight plays out on the feet, or if Marab will be able to control him on the mat. And if there's anything about Marab, it's like he has a ton of takedowns because he's not able to control opponents. So what that does is it inspires confidence in my Cody Stamen pick. I'm somewhat underweight on Marab, and I know that's crazy, especially if you've been box score watching and you see what he's done in the past to previous opponents. Now, styles make fights. I am a little aggressive on Cody Stamen, but I'm tempering expectations as far as DFS production because I think that he could do well in an actual fight. I think that he could prevent takedowns, punish him on the feet, win a decision, not really score the best for us because maybe he doesn't get a finish, maybe he doesn't get a knockdown. He's probably not going to be looking to take down Marab, but, stranger things have happened. So I like Cody Stamen. I'm a little bit above the field on him, a little bit below on Marab Davishvili. But if you are a safe player, right? If you're a safe player, you probably want to consider Marab and have him a part of your pool just because, if it's not broken, then why try to fix it? And, when you've rostered him in the past, he's come through. But that John Dodson's, fight really speaks to me. And I think that Cody Stamen can look at that performance and say, well, I could probably defend takedowns better than John Dodson. Maybe I can actually win this fight.
Yeah, the one thing I will say about Marab in terms of what his salary is on DraftKings, I do feel like you need 5+ takedowns for him to be optimal at $9,000. That to me is where I'm at. Marab is my concern is the fight stays on the feet. And Jared mentioned in the chat, you just want to be safe with this fight, just bet it to go the distance. I mean, that's the way I would go in terms of this matchup. This is where in MMA, why you have to, your analysis has to be part analytical, but also part about the fighting styles. People are going to look at Marab's average score and they're just going to pin him in a lineup. This is where I think you could potentially take advantage. Cody, and I talked about this Thursday, Cody's team, they believe this is a excellent matchup for him. I do believe this is a step up in competition for Marab in this aspect, but look, he's going to have to deal with the pace. You watch the film on Marab, you see the pace that he is going to bring. Mention a question here from Rob. He says, think it's a good idea to have 80% or more on the main event. Jacoby, Kutalaba, and Bilar, and Michailidis. Michailidis, he might be the sneaky play of this slate. Because when we talk about those 9,000 fighters, I think he's the one that everyone will go away from. They're going to look at those other 9,000 options. There's a 9,000 option that I think is going to be a core play for me, and that's Sean Strickland.
Yeah, I like Strickland quite a bit. I think that he could work towards a finish. I think he's in a good spot, and I think that he can punish Krzysztof Jotko in multiple areas throughout the fight. But you're completely correct, right? Like if you are taking just an analytical approach, you could be missing the stylistic matchups or the stylistic nightmares in some fights. And, I think that the Cody Stamen fight and Marab makes a lot of sense as far as like Cody Stamen being able to pull the upset. In addition to that, I think that, we talked about Sean Strickland, but as far as these 9,000 options, right? Like Michailidis, I'm underweight, and I think that's going to be a common choice for multiple people because you can't roster every 9,000 option. And if you looked at the ceremonial weigh-ins, man, KB Bilar is a mammoth of a man compared to Michailidis. Like very, very tall, very rangy. Strength of schedule is pretty questionable, but I think that KB Bilar is an interesting GPP play for sure. But when I'm looking at this card, I'm excited for it. It's going to be an interesting landscape as far as taking down the optimal lineup. But I think a perfect way to do that is get different, and a contrarian Stamen pick makes a lot of sense.
Let me bring this question over from our Slack count from Crimson Raider. Says, thoughts on Luke Boomy in the MVP spot on FanDuel?
Sneaky, very sneaky, right? Because she's going to have to stop takedowns from Sam Hughes. Has the striking advantage, can definitely punish Sam Hughes. But I think that Sam Hughes is probably going to be the most under-owned fighter on the slate, and probably a fighter that a lot of people are overlooking. So if you want to consider Sam Hughes as an ownership play, I don't hate it. But Luke Boomy for me is, on FanDuel would make a lot of sense because of defending takedowns, but on DraftKings she's priced so high. If she doesn't get a finish, does she really pay off the salary?
Yeah, Sam Hughes is a 5% play for me today.
Yeah.
Just do not like that very much. Now, of course, when you want to get access to all the premium tools and data we have over Awesemo.com, sign up for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. And if you just want an MMA pass, get that for $8.95. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Go to awesemo.com/join, where you can get access to those ownership projections. That top fighter tool is a great tool to use as you're developing your lineups tonight for UFC Vegas number 25. Trey asking if there's any fights that we are avoiding.
Any fights that we are avoiding? Not really, because it's a 11 fight slate now, so you really can't avoid any fight, but it also depends on the size of the contest that you're in, right? Like, obviously, if you're in a single entry, you're going to avoid some fights. If you're in a 20 max, you're going to avoid more than you would in the 150. So, obviously, when you're in a 150, you kind of want to touch on a lot of the fights, if not all of them. There's a fight on here. Probably one of my least favorite fights on the card, just from like tempering expectations, probably that Random Marcos Pinheiro fight. I just don't know what to expect from Pinheiro, and Random Marcos has really let me down multiple times despite being a UFC veteran. I am targeting both sides of it, but that's probably my least favorite fight on the card. To kind of circle back on a previous question you asked me about having about 80% exposure to the main event, I think that's accurate. Like for most of my lineups, I'm somewhere around that ballpark. I started basically with the main event and then started to target some of these other GPP fights like the, Jan Kudaleba and, Jacoby fight. So I think that's a nice starting point for a lot of your lineups.
And that leads me to the next topic of conversation. And Doug brings this up in our Slack channel. After the ceremonial weigh-ins, how do you feel about Kudaleba and Jacoby? I am sure by now everyone has seen exactly what happened. And this is something that I talked to Dustin about last Friday. And, of the antics. And, one thing that he said to me, he goes, look, he is an emotional fighter, meaning about Kudaleba. And so let me get your perspective as someone who's done these stare downs. Kudaleba comes up, and Jacoby's just doing the typical, hey, we're doing the pose down, let me put my hands up, and he goes to immediately grab the back of his neck. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, so let me just say that crossed the line, right? Like, we've seen it multiple weeks. We've seen, Jeremy Stevens, push Jakar close. That doesn't even seem nearly as bad as this, grabbing Jacoby by the neck in a collar tie. And I understand it's a collar tie, but you're pulling him towards you. And I don't know if you watched the UFC video, but he grabs him, snatches him by the neck, pulls him close, and he says, "You're my bonus." So, like, man, that's some intense stuff, right? He's telling Jacoby, "You're my bonus," and I'm excited for the fight. And I think targeting that fight now makes even more sense, because if Jacoby wasn't emotional, perhaps he's more emotional in this fight. Jan Kudaleba is going to come in there extremely emotional and wild and reckless. So I think we're going to see a big score in that fight. That's outside the main event, that's my most prioritized fight. And I think that, the under 2.5 makes a lot of sense, because either somebody's going to get reckless and finished, somebody's going to get exhausted and finished. You have bad blood, which definitely leads to more mistakes and more finishes. So I'm excited for that fight. But yeah, I thought Jan Kudaleba was lucky he didn't get elbowed in the face.
Here's the one thing, and I think you're going to see some type of reaction now with the UFC on, look, you don't get paid on weigh-in day. Like, how many, I remember back in the day, Burt Watson, this was his big thing on weigh-in day. Fellas, do not touch each other. You do not get paid today. Do not potentially ruin your chance to get a paycheck tomorrow. And look, it would not shock me if Kudaleba loses tonight. It's his final fight in the UFC. It would not surprise me one bit. And it's going to be the UFC's way to send a message. Now, look, maybe it causes Jacoby to be reckless, or maybe he just offered, bulletin board type material for Jacoby. Why do I just see Kudaleba coming out and getting reckless, and Jacoby just takes him straight to the ground and he wears him down for 5 minutes?
I would be surprised with that. Like, I'm still leaning on the Cutelaba side, but, you know, recklessness and emotion does make you make mistakes. I still think that Cutelaba is an interesting matchup for Jacoby, especially if he can get inside. I like Jacoby as the rounds go on, of course. You know, coming on later, capitalizing on possibly poor cardio, you know, wild looping shots, hitting him straight down the middle, low leg kicks, stuff of that nature. But, you know, I'm excited for the fight, and it's clearly, I spoke about it from betting standpoint, from DFS structure. I think you need to have exposure to it. If you want a contrarian approach, avoid the fight. Avoid the fight. Let everybody else pick it. You know, when there's so much emotion, maybe somebody makes a mistake and they get DQ'd because they knee him in the head because they're just so mad, or, you know, like silly things like that could lead to mistakes. But, you know, also perhaps it's like a sloppy fight back and forth, and it doesn't really materialize into what we're expecting. So contrarian approach would be avoid the fight, let everybody else deal with it. But I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is one of those. It's a fight that to me is a total GPP fight.
Yeah.
I would be fairly surprised if this fight goes all 15 minutes. I would be very surprised with that. I mean, look, you're talking about, you've got a technical kickboxer against a wild man. I mean, that to me is the best way to put it. I mean, look, if Cutelaba is going to win this fight, I believe it's within the first 5 minutes. If this thing gets out of that first 5 minutes, and you can place a live betting, I would be looking at placing a live bet on Dustin Jacoby. Next up, let's see here. Who's your favorite FanDuel MVP? I got one for you. It's Sean Strickland.
Ooh. Okay.
Someone asked me earlier today in my office hours, and the more I just kept thinking about it, I was like, man, the volume I think we see from Sean Strickland. I mean, look, I think that people are going to look at the main event of going to MVP there. I think people are going to look at Cutelaba and Jacoby going main event, going MVP there. To me, I'm looking at other ones and stoppages, volume. Sean Strickland is a guy that I'm really finding myself on.
Yeah, I love Sean Strickland today, and I've liked him in his previous bouts as well. I think that he's a sneaky play for sure. I feel like a lot of people are going to back him, though. Like, I feel like out of the 9,000 options, okay, Lubumi, Strickland, Mihailidis, Davishvili. I think Strickland and Davishvili will be the most popular, of course. That's pretty obvious. But I think that Sean Strickland is sneaky to get a finish, and a lot of people kind of looking back at decisions. Krzysztof Jotko over the years has been durable, but when he's hit with some big shots, he is rocked and he is able to get put away. And I'm excited for the fight. I think that it's a nightmare matchup for Krzysztof Jotko, but we'll have to see. Jotko does represent a grappling perspective, and he's a big guy. So, you know, we'll have to see how the fight plays out, but I can't wait.
There's someone asking about on the DraftKings captain contest. Now you got to pay up $15,300 for Strickland in that opportunity. You know, do I dare say TJ Brown at 8,700 with potential takedowns?
Yeah, it's sneaky. I'm going to open it right now. I kind of like playing in the captain mode, and full transparency, I don't have a lot of success in that because I'm kind of just like always one off, or I don't pick the correct captain. Davishvili will easily be the most popular captain out there. Okay. Looking at that contest, he will easily be the most popular. I think TJ Brown's really, really interesting. And probably the second most common captain will be Dom Reyes, because he allows you to put in so many other fighters and he's cheap.
William, appreciate you there in the super chat. Said he won 65,000 last week, hoping to keep the heater going. Don't know any of these fighters. That is understandable. These fight night cards are cards you got to kind of do a deep dive. You know, look, it's not just looking at the fight film and looking at how styles make fights, but it's also about looking at the analytical side. Congrats, man, on taking down those contests, man. That's awesome. I did pretty well last week myself, so I had a nice little profit.
Yeah, huge week, William. Congratulations. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing with us and supporting us. We really appreciate you. We have 260 people checking us out right now. I know you guys are scrambling, making lineups, jotting notes down. If you appreciate this show and you like what Jason and I do, just hit that thumbs up button and pop your questions into chat.
Matt says, now that we're down to 11 fights, do you think the main event is stackable in either cash or GPPs? My answer is simply no.
It's a no for me because it's a striking match, right? Like, it's priced like you could stack it. It is priced like you could stack it, but based on their styles, it doesn't make a lot of sense because, Prochazka is going to go out there and throw bombs. And Dom Reyes is probably going to do the same thing, but resort on a lot of kicks, a lot of distance striking, and maybe we'll see Dom Reyes kind of clinch him and test his grappling. But, I don't think it's stackable.
Single entry question here. If you're playing one lineup, do you play Marab?
No, I say no. One lineup, no, because you want to get different. And, I think that taking a slight underweight approach to that makes a lot of sense. And one lineup, you want to be able to take down or shoot up the ladder. And one way to do that is to avoid a chalky fighter.
Travis says, how heavy are we on the first fight?
I wish I had my exposures still with me, but I didn't save my, I did not save my exposures.
I think I was around 15% on Luke Sanders. And then I was at, was either 5 or 10% on Kalaris.
Yeah, I was probably about double yours then. I was probably about 22% on Sanders and about 12.5, 15 on Kalaris. I just think that the first fight of the night is usually a crazy fight that tends to have a lot of mistakes, a lot of big scores. A lot of people don't want to bother with the first fight of the night. This is an ultimate test because Luke Sanders was supposed to be a lot better than what he's really turned out to be. And Felipe Kalaris has, been tough over the years, but he came in and looking in great shape. So a late round finish is always possible for Kalaris.
Yeah, it's just one of those fights of don't have a lot of trust in either one of those fighters. Mm-hmm. Just being honest with you. Of course, we are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. With Monkey Knife Fight, you are in charge. Go to monkeyknifefight.com. When you sign up, use that promo code Awesemo for an instant first match deposit up to $100. And someone was asking about Monkey Knife Fight, so I just want to pull up their more or less contest on the main event.
All right, let's hear it.
All right, we got more or less significant strikes. Yuri, 49.5. Dom Reyes, 39.5.
Okay, so one thing I noticed about Monkey Knife Fight, right? Like, if you're doing the scores, the fantasy scores, you have to take into consideration if you think the fight's going to go the distance, because if it's an early finish, then you kind of just, box yourself out of that. Now, with the significant strikes, there's 5 rounds. How many rounds do you think the main event goes?
I don't think it hits the 4th round.
If you think it goes that far, I'd probably say over for both.
I would be more, because I do like Reyes. I'd probably go more on Reyes, less on Yuri.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Yuri's new hairstyle. We'll have to, I don't know. We'll have to see. He might, we'll have to see. It's an interesting fight, but he's so unorthodox and tricky that it's all about durability. He got hit several times against Volkan Ozdemir, kind of overcame that adversity. Reyes has been pretty tough, been hit plenty of times, but Jan Blachowicz really caught him with a big shot. I would probably say over on more on both.
I will tell you, I like the more or less on fantasy points, where Yuri's at 208.5 and Dom Reyes is at 165.5.
Depends on who you think wins and when it happens, because there's no bonus for like an early finish. It's only 25 points for a victory over there. So,
if you think it's going to be an early finish, 1st, 2nd round,
you say less on both.
Take less on both of them.
Yeah,
no, that's
100%.
exactly the way. I'll mention one other one in significant strikes because I do think this fight's going to play out on the feed, and that's the co-main event of Cub Swanson and Giga Chikadze. 50.5 is a significant strike number on Cub Swanson. For Giga, 49.5.
I'll tell you, I'm hitting the over on Giga because I think he's going to leg kick him. He's going to body kick him. He might throw 49 kicks. The Cub Swanson one's interesting because can he get inside of those kicks, and can he withstand them? I like that platform over there. I'm excited. I'll have to play again tonight.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with going more 49.5 on Chikadze. The question with Cub Swanson 50.5. I feel like if he's getting the 50, I feel like you have to be thinking it's going a distance, which I think we got a good chance. I always go all 15 minutes. I think that's a really solid more or less number in terms of Cub Swanson.
Also, what happens if Cub goes out there and tests the grappling of Chikadze, right? That's kind of a path to victory that is definitely possible.
Yeah. Scott mentions, could you stack Marab and Stamen on FanDuel given the takedown defenses? FanDuel question. Here's the other thing. Cody could go for takedowns too.
I kind of like that from a contrarian approach, maybe for like a lineup or two. But obviously, like, you are really limiting yourself to upside from other fighters. You would need that fight to be exactly like what we're saying. Tons of scrambles, tons of takedowns, tons of defenses, and other underdogs to not really come through. Then a situation like that could happen.
To me, if you are going to stack that on FanDuel, your hope is Marab wins.
100%. Like, that's always how it is, right? Like, when you're stacking a fight, you need the high option to still get a victory because, you know, the low option can score high in a loss, and that's fine. You don't want a high option to score low when you just possibly, you know, box yourself out from other high options that got victories.
Yeah. And one of the great things I'll say about the tools and data we have over Awesemo.com, I'm a hand builder in MMA, but I use all the tools. I look at ownership, and I'll tell you the one thing when I look at ownership, I'm looking at fighters under 20%. Those are the fighters I'm trying to find. And also, we talk about this every week. Find those fighters between 8,300 and 8,700. That can separate and ultimately lead you to a big win in GPPs.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, that 8,000, 8,200 fight's a disaster each week. And you saw it in the Molina fight last week, how he completely, you know, outperformed his salary. And if you didn't have him, you probably didn't take down a GPP. But, you know, we think about the fighters that are in the 8,800, 8,700 that are kind of lost. Maybe Luke Sanders is one of those guys. And, you know, I'm excited for this card and, you know, excited to see you guys, you know, post your screenshots, also post your exposures. If you have an upset that you think is going to be the biggest upset, shoot it in chat. We love discussing stuff like that.
This comes in from Matthew. He goes, what fighter do you guys have the most of / highest hopes for? I know who my highest exposed fighter is. It's at 45%. That tells you how I'm pretty spread out today. TJ Brown.
Ooh. Okay.
Now, I am counting on him going the takedown route. That is purely what I'm counting on there. Brown Kamaka, I do feel like the winner of that fight will be in the optimal lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, full transparency, my approach for most of my lineups, main event, Kudalaba Jacoby, Brown Kamaka. I kind of mixed and matched a lot of those. If you're watching, I highly suggest you do that because I think that it's going to be, you know, that's a decent core to kind of work with. But for me, as far as like a value play that's at a reasonable price tag, I think Dom Reyes is the guy for me. I mean, you know, losing back-to-back fights to John Jones and then Jan Blachowicz, this is a nice little measuring fight where we're going to see where he's at right now.
Biggest upset tonight?
I mean, listen, I wish I knew that, right? Because every night, and just like anything, like you basketball, you want to find those overlooked fighters. Who are we not talking about, team? We have not talked about the Randa Marcos Luana Pinheiro fight. really at all. And Luana Pinheiro, fantastic judo competitor, fantastic jiu-jitsu competitor, making her UFC debut, look good on the Contender Series, going up against a proven veteran in Randa Marcos, who alternated wins and losses for the longest time, but finds herself on the mat a lot. And in her fights, she closes the gap a lot and tries to clinch a lot. And what that does is it allows a judo competitor to really work a head and arm throw or toss her and put her there. So maybe Luana's that sneaky play. Obviously, it's a massive step up in competition. And if she can't get the takedown, then I am worried about Randa Marcos outpointing her on the feet.
Stamen or Brillar, last spot in. Tristan, I would first ask, is that a FanDuel or DraftKings question? If it's DraftKings, I'm probably, God, I hate saying Brillar, but I might. If it's FanDuel, it's Stamen.
Yeah, so Brillar is in my top 2 favorite underdog long shot plays, complete long shot plays. Obviously and naturally, whenever you find a fighter opposite from a 9,000 fighter, you're going to have a ton of leverage because everybody's going to pick the 9,000 option. And if they come through, they're at a really, really reasonable price tag. I think KB Brillar, his style and how big he is, could possibly pose some problems to Michailidis, because Michailidis likes to strike. But I'll tell you, I was watching pad work with him in other fights, and his hands, Jason, are literally under his chin like this. Now, you're fighting a guy with massive reach advantage. He could literally light you up with straight punches, and he has incredible dexterity with his kicks. So maybe my crazy call of the night, and I only have him in 15% of my lineups. My crazy call of the night, KB Brillar knocks out Michailidis.
It's an interesting one. That is definitely an interesting one out there. Rick asked it, who's the under the radar to throw them bungalows tonight? I don't know if I can say there's an under the radar to throw them bungalows. It could. Now, look, I could see TJ Brown, Kai Kamaka turn into a brawl, because I think that's what Kai Kamaka wants. Yeah,
I think that's what Kai Kamaka needs. I mean, 2 guys, don't really know how we can trust either of them. TJ Brown with Glory MMA, James Krause. You would imagine that a game plan with James Krause, he's done it to how many fighters now? Derek Minner. The list goes on and on. When you go to James Krause, he's going to provide you with a thorough game plan and have you well prepared for the fight. Sneaky fight that could turn into a brawl. I'm going to say the first fight of the night.
And one of the things about James Krause, I think he's one of the best in fight coaches too. He knows what to say to his fighter to get what he wants out of his fighter. Mm-hmm. Obviously a lot of praise has come to James Krause over the past couple of months, but great coach there. Now, of course, one of the things we love to do here at Awesemo is celebrate our subscribers and, well, our coworkers who go out there and put on great performances in our Awesemo Hall of Fame. Of course, they are rocking that Awesemo avatar, which of course you can get at awesemo.com/avatar. Of course, to get yourself in the Awesemo Hall of Fame, place in the top 3 of a contest with 5,000 plus contestant. Tweet your wins to @Awesemo HOF on Twitter. You win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And of course, you see all the screenshots there Tyler's got on the screen. Even our man Pete the Heat taking down an NBA Showdown contest the other night. Yeah, smile about it, bro. I mean, smile about it. What was it, Shake Milton you had in the captain spot?
Yeah, I was playing for the blowout, and the blowout happened, and I liked how guards perform against Atlanta. So obviously I said, okay, well, I'm going to take the backup point guard. I do like Shake Milton, and I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe he only had 13 minutes. And he absolutely exploded and had just crazy offensive production.
Yeah, 48.75 there in that champion spot, man. Yeah, great line you had, because especially when you're talking about the 76ers, naturally people are going, let me put Embiid in that spot, let me put Ben Simmons, Tobias in that spot, so kudos to you with that. Of course, hopefully someone in one of our contests can take down the big GPP on DraftKings tonight. So, of course, be sure to send that over to us. Next up, let's go to FanDuel Cash Better Combo. Luke Boomy and Bilar or Michailidis and Stamen.
I really only like one option from both of them, so I'll say the first. I'll say the first one. Luke Boomy and Bilar, and mainly because Luke Boomy's going to have to defend takedowns.
Charles brings up a question over our Slack saying, "Is there a strategy to use when it comes to single entries?" I will tell you how my strategy goes. It typically is I'm starting with who do I want to build my lineups around. So typically I'm looking at that top end. So in tonight's case, I'm building it around Sean Strickland. Then I'm going to that under 76, 7,500 range on DK. I'm finding someone in there. Then I'm usually going into the middle range at 83 to 8,700. And then I'm kind of filling out my roster that way, but also using ownership and kind of, deciding where I want to go. I will tell you, I love playing single entries. I love playing three maxes. Those are really my go-to contests.
Yeah, incredible points, Jason. And I would say that, find out the fight that you want to have exposure to. For me this week, I want exposure to the main event. So I start there. Second thing I do is I look at the 9,000 options and I eliminate one. And I say, okay, who am I okay with not having any shares of, in this single entry? Like, who do I think the public will be on and could possibly underperform? Maybe you're thinking it's Davishvili. Maybe you think it's Michailidis. Then I say, okay, I'm okay with that. That's when I start filling out the rest of my lineups, prioritizing certain matchups and whatnot.
Yeah. Matt he goes, I love Ronda. I want her to win so badly, but they're sitting killers after her. This girl has finished 8 straight in round 1. Yeah, this definitely feels like a fight that it's potentially the sending Ronda Marcos out of the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, you would think so. But the one, scare that I have is when you see a fighter with tons of round 1 finishes and then they're making their debut in the UFC, because it's very hard to get a victory in the UFC, never mind get a finish. So how does she look in rounds 2 and 3 if Ronda Marcos, who is very tough to put away, is just stubborn?
Yeah. Which 9K fighter on DraftKings do you have the most ownership on? I think, it's Sean Strickland to me. If I was going to rank them, and I'll get your take here in a second. If I was going to rank them, my number 1 would be Sean Strickland. My number 2 would be Luke Boomy. My number 3 would be Andreas. And then my number 4 would be Marab.
Yeah, so it's Strickland, Luke Boomy, Davishvili, and Michailidis for me. I still have plenty of exposure to Davishvili, even though I don't think he's going to win, because I don't want all 150 of my lineups to be toast. I want to have that exposure, and he's put up some decent totals in the past, and I'd feel silly if I didn't have any exposure.
Isaac asks a question. He says, far-fetched question, but you never know with such a small card. Is it possible for a same fight stack tonight makes optimal? Has that ever happened? To me, when you start getting into 9 fights or less, that's when stacking does become an option. But the thing is with stacking, especially with this DraftKings scoring system, if it's going to be a fight that plays out on the feet, you don't have no knockdowns, you have got to have a crap ton of volume for it to work.
Yeah, so you need exactly everything you said. You need the high option to perform well and the low option to perform well even in a loss. Usually a fight like the 8,200, 8,000 fight makes a lot of sense. It's just this week, does it even go 15 minutes? I don't really foresee that happening. Or which low range fighter are you okay with, rostering that you think could still get some points? Maybe it's Luke Boomy, Sam Hughes. Like maybe it goes 15 and you see Luke Boomy absolutely demolish her, but Sam Hughes gets tons of takedowns or something like that. But it's a no for me. I wouldn't recommend it.
EG asks, he goes, how do you best control your exposures? Do you stack or groups? What I do is I go in the cruncher and I set my exposures that way.
Yeah, I do both. I like to do groups. Groups are kind of like how I ensure that I have at least one of a certain, pairing. And I like to kind of mix and match. If I like 4 fighters and I want to get 2 of them, I like the diversification of Fantasy Cruncher. Highly suggest you guys check it out. 300 people in here, Jason, checking us out. You guys can get us over 125 likes. We got a little bit of time. Shoot your questions in the chat.
Of course, I mentioned about that Awesemo Plus weekly pass we have out there. One of the great advantages to Awesemo Plus is you get access to our premium Slack account where you can talk to myself and Pete in the MMA channel during the fights, unless maybe if I've got cocktails in hand, then I kind of just don't exactly do it much, Yeah, Pete, I'm not a lightweight, Pete. I'm not a lightweight, There might be there might be a couple cocktails. There might be a couple cocktails involved. I will tell you this. I was out of town this week for a couple of days, and I definitely partaked. Let's just say that.
Yeah, we're going to have to party one of these days, like after one of my fights or something. Like, I party in a very small capacity, but like it'd be fun, especially after a fight.
Especially those hotel bar prices, man. I think the first round I got was like $25 for me and my wife.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's the way it works, man. It's just the way it works, man. But you could chat with us as we're always in there. And if you add us, make sure that me and Pete see it in our Slack notifications. Next up, David says Colares or Brown. I would prefer Brown in that equation.
So Brown, oddly enough, we haven't been able to trust him at all. But I like the move to glory with James Krause. I like the grappling advantage. I didn't like what I saw in Kamaka's previous performance. So I would say that. I mean, Colares is very tough, and, putting away Sanders would probably have to happen later on in the fight.
Next up, who scores more in a win, Luke Boomy or Marab?
In a win, probably Marab, because if he's able to win, he's going to take down Cody Stamen. Yeah. I just don't know how he is if he can't get him down. If he can't get him down, I'd be completely surprised he beats Cody Stamen on the feet.
Yeah. The one thing about Marab is if the fight's on the feet, is there enough volume from him to make it a score at 9,000 you're going to be happy with? Because Scott, look, he's been a decision machine in the UFC. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. Now, one of the things that he does go for his main training partner is the champion who has a win over Cody Stamen, and that means Aljo. But of course, he hasn't been able to train with Aljo since the last fight. Right,
exactly. And, you think of Matt Serra. I don't know if Matt Serra is going to be in his corner, and how Matt Serra doesn't want to corner anybody anymore. And I think that's a nice thing to have him in his corner, obviously. And now you talk about, who's he been training with? We'll have to see. And
he's been in Vegas. So I believe he's done a lot of work at Syndicate, I want to say.
Really?
Because I think he tried to do some stuff at Extreme Couture, but that's where
Stamen's at.
Yeah, he's been at Syndicate. So that's John Wood runs Syndicate. And
yeah,
so he's doing a lot of stuff at the PI. Look, and that's where a lot of fighters are going out to because of the PI and the advantage there. I thought one of the most interesting things that Cody Stamen and he's talked about these past couple of interviews. I've been interviewing Cody since he was on the regional scene in Michigan. So I know kind of the ins and outs of Cody Stamen. But the one thing that he said to me of training at the PI is that he's learned about the fact of training smarter, not harder. And you know this. It's like you have this mentality of, I got to train 3 times a day. I remember Eric Anders telling me, he went through the battery of tests there, and his mindset was, I got to train 3 times a day. And they told him, they said, actually, you're hurting your body by doing that because of his body type, that getting 2 workouts a day was just as beneficial. And so that's one of those things that you have to, is an interesting thing, and why you're seeing more and more fighters at the PI.
Yeah. I mean, it's always a case of overtraining and balancing, making sure that you're doing enough, but not killing your body. And I think Junior Dos Santos is a fighter that is pretty famous for it, where he trained so hard that his body started to shut down. And I forget the term of it, but like basically his muscle started to deteriorate from all of his work, his exercise and everything. So he was doing more harm than good. Getting yourself around a bunch of specialists that are really, talented in sports medicine is extremely important. And I think that we'll start to see UFC PIs start to hop up a little bit more throughout the United States.
Rick says, what's your best sport for DFS outside of MMA? Right now, I'm on a kill. I am killing NASCAR. I am on a roll on NASCAR. Probably by me saying that means I'm about to hit a slump in NASCAR. But for me, the next one for me would be NBA.
Yeah, so for me, it's Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike is my thing.
You kill it over there on Counter-Strike.
Yeah, Counter-Strike, if I just realized that you could, sync your account to your results. So I wish I did this in the past. I think I'd be in the top 10. But regardless, I like MMA a lot. I like MLB and basketball a lot too. Probably basketball is my third best.
Yeah. Denny Diamond says, he goes, am I crazy to go over the field on Cub? I don't think that's a crazy thought.
No, I think Cub Swanson, right? Like we haven't talked about Cub Swanson a lot, and he's going to come in with massive ownership. So make sure that you have some Cub Swanson, because a lot of people are banking on his UFC and WEC career to kind of, capitalize against this prospect in Giga Chikadze. Now, I like Giga Chikadze in the fight because I'm a kickboxer and I like what I've seen from kicking range. But Cub Swanson, if he's able to get inside, can make things interesting, has incredible power, good combinations, a sneaky ground game. But the one concern I have is how Daniel Pineda was kind of butchering his legs with leg kicks in. Listen, Giga Chikadze kicks you in the leg, you ain't walking.
By the way, Charles over our Slack account says, Pete, you've beaten me. It has to go 3 times this week.
Yeah, Counter-Strike's my thing, man. Counter-Strike's my thing. If there's a slate, like showdowns are my wheelhouse. And if there's like a 2-gamer, I'm all about it.
Yeah. Next up, question was, is there a fighter we are surprised by their ownership? That's from Stay On. Yeah, I'll tell you who it is. Marab. I'm surprised how high his ownership is.
It's the casuals.
It's the thing is because we look at it from a fight aspect, and styles make fights. And this is a different stylistic fight than Marab's had in the UFC to this point.
And also, I'll tell you what it is. People saw how, his previous opponent, Cody Stamen's previous opponent, took him down. And they think that, Marab's caliber, he's going to take him down constantly. But let me tell you, Jimmy Rivera has been a staple within the division for a while. And there's more things to worry about when you're fighting Jimmy Rivera. So when you're training for Jimmy Rivera, you got to focus on your striking because he hits really hard. He's tough in the clinch. He has solid wrestling. When you're fighting Marab Davishvili, you are literally focusing your camp around takedown defense, which I think could be huge here.
Yeah. Ryan says, which fighter $12 and under on FanDuel would you use? So I'm going to take Cody Stamen out of this question because we talked so much about Cody Stamen in terms of, I was going to pinpoint another one. And by the way, Cody, $11 over there. Am I crazy to say Carolina?
No. And I'm happy you brought her up because I'm picking her to win the fight. It's Luana Carolina, it's a low-level fight. I think Poliana Botelho's kind of stock is inflated based on a couple performances. She's also a pretty girl. So people, the UFC, they're kind of hyping her up. But I think that this is a pretty even fight between her and Luana Carolina. And if it plays out in the feet, Luana's not bad in the jiu-jitsu department as well. And it's a low-level fight, guys. It's a low-level fight. But I predict it's going to go 3 rounds. We'll see.
Joe, appreciate you in the super chat. He says, am I the only one that's worried that Davishvili versus Stamen matchup could be similar to Romanov versus Espino, both guys with 80% takedown defense?
Yeah. Hi, Joe. Thank you for the support. What's up, buddy? I am worried about they will nullify each other in some aspects throughout the fight. I'm worried about the fight from a cardio and pace aspect. Can Stamen sustain the same pace that Marab's going to bring? Can he match the same cardio and intensity? Because, Stamen's a big guy. Stamen is a big guy. But, you know, Davishvili could get exhausted from getting punished with strikes too. Well, I'm excited to see the fight.
Man, our guy Mark loaded up the cooler tonight. I've seen that over in Slack. He's got a fine collection of adult beverages in that mini fridge over there. Nice little mini fridge, Mark. I like how you're locked and loaded for the fights tonight. I feel like we haven't talked a lot about the main event. We've talked about how we need to have it.
Yeah.
You know, we talked on the strategy show about the mindset of Dom Reyes. Back-to-back losses, Yuri with that win his UFC debut, but he's a wild man. But the one thing about him is when he was over in Reyes and he was fighting tough guys.
Yeah, so if you're just tuning in now or you didn't listen to our strategy show or us earlier, have exposure to the main event. I'm leaning towards Dom Reyes, but I have a ton of Yuri Prochazka because of what he can do and how he can punch. Obviously, the later the fight goes, the more I'm backing Dom Reyes. But his combinations are legit. His power is legit. His strength of schedule is legit. I mean, he has excellent victories. A victory over Vadim Nemkov. You talked about it. He's fought Muhammad Lawal, but actually lost and was knocked out in that bout. But he's fought some really, really talented people. He fought Muhammad Lawal again and, you know, beat him in the third round, you know, finished Fabio Maldonado, who's a fantastic striker, took out CB Dalloway, who's a good grappler. So the guy is able to put people out, and his trickiness of his style definitely leads to finishes.
Joe says, is it bad that I'm not having any exposure to first fight on Sanders versus Colaros fight on DraftKings? I guess it would depend on how many lineups you're putting in.
I'm not avoiding it. I mean, like,
if you were doing like a 3 max 5 lineups, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But I think when you're talking about 10, 20 and up, you got to have that fight.
Yeah, 100%. I have plenty of exposure to it. I'm more on the Luke Sanders side, but I don't trust Luke Sanders. And I have plenty of Corrales. We'll have to see, man. It's the first fight's always a nightmare.
And, of course, as I look up at the clock, it is time to get out of here for this edition of Live Before Lock. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Of course, I'll hop over to Slack if you got any more questions. Of course, coming up next is NBA Deeper Dive, as they will get you ready for tonight's NBA slate. So, Tyler, you can hit that music. Good luck to everyone tonight with your UFC lineups.